trying to be it first, right?
Yep.
Like be the thing that you want other people to emulate is the goal.
Yep.
Imperfect
Right.
in many ways, but there was a lady. I was involved in the president's office at UCF when I was out there, and Dr. Barnes used to come speak to the council, and she used to say, "Bloom where you're planted." And at its most basic, analogy level, it's like you just be excellent at what you do. But beyond that, a plant, the roots go out. They go out seeking nutrients, seeking growth, seeking things like that. And it was like that's what I want for people. I want, no matter what they're doing, to be trying to be better, trying to better themselves, trying to be exceptional for themselves and for our clients. And so if they do that, everything else just happens.
Yeah. Welcome to Beyond the Blueprint, powered by Contractors, Closers, and Connections Orlando. Join me for in-depth interviews with some of the top commercial real estate and development executives in the industry. We uncover their success stories, their strategies, and their lessons learned along the way. Gain valuable insight whether you're a seasoned pro or just starting out. So Trent Scott, I appreciate you joining me on the Beyond the Blueprint. It is, like I was saying earlier, it is an honor to have you here. And, whenever I was putting together the list of who I would have on, I put together like a whole spreadsheet of like, okay, who in the industry do I feel would be a good fit, not only for the community and the industry, but also to be able to sit down and just kind of learn a little bit more about you. So I appreciate you joining me here at Beyond the Blueprint. We'll go ahead and start off with just kind of who you are and who you're with, and then we'll go from there.
Yeah. Well, thanks for having me.
Yeah.
I don't know if I'll stack up to all the people on your list, but I'll attempt to at least. I grew up in Florida. I was born and raised over in Sarasota, and I came to UCF for college. I thought I wanted to be an aerospace engineer. And so UCF's engineering program, all that stuff was what kind of drove me this way. And about halfway through, after I did all the hard math classes, through lots of circumstances that were orchestrated, I decided not to do engineering. So I ended up switching into finance. At that time, UCF didn't have a real estate major. So It was, I could be a finance major, and then there was a minor track in real estate. Right. And I had started like getting involved in, like, we bought a house off the backside of campus and the feel for renting, all that stuff. But I didn't really know anything about it at the time.
You just knew the numbers behind this.
Yeah, there was exactly. There was like finance numbers to intrigue me at least. And so once I got into that major, buddy of mine through church and through the fraternity at UCF that we were both in was like, hey, like my boss, he had just started working in real estate, was looking for an intern, and I knew you needed credit and all that kind of stuff. And so he connected me with him. And I started interning. The first semester was for credit only, not pay. And then I apparently was valuable enough, at least,
to keep you on.
for Chuck to keep me on for the next semester. And I ended up off and on for almost 2 years, doing the internship, part-time work type thing. And then I met
what did that internship consist of?
It was a lot of shadowing, a lot of just sort of absorbing, spending time. At that time in First Capital's history, Chuck and then Craig, this buddy of mine who was there, they were brokerage. I mean, they were the only ones doing any of that work. And so it was just me sort of soaking that up. And they have always been a big property management company. And so just understanding all of it. I think my first assignment was he had just brought on a property, and he just a stack of old the legal size folders of leases, and was like, we're going to abstract these. And I was like, what does that mean? and so, I just started, gave me the basic template. I just started reading through, and I just asking questions constantly. That was it. I mean, I'm not hesitant to ask until I understand, because that's kind of always, I need to know how things work.
Right.
And so I just dug in deep, did a couple of properties of shopping centers of just abstracting all the leases and trying to understand, like, how does this whole machine work
in a way that like ties into your engineering background, right?
Exactly. No, that's what I'm saying. I'm a like, I want to know how the gears fit behind the machine, that kind of thing by default. When it's just kind of like finance too. Sure. Like, as a quick aside, my wife, like she was trying to get me involved in this charity. And the first thing I asked her after we left this like intro event, I was like, who pays for it all? How does it like, just
asking all the questions.
So that's like my natural, like bend in interest.
Sure.
And so, yeah, I just started shadowing him and asking questions, understanding, how the pieces fit together. And then we had some projects that popped up during that time. Like we've done some work for the city, and they were like, hey, we need you to go do this. And Chuck was like, all right, well, look what you get to go do. I mean, he was amazing about being open to anything and just, guiding me, letting me make some mistakes, but, guardrails,
Sure.
And so, yeah, I just did that in a number of different projects over the years. And then as I went to, came up on graduation, my wife and I had met or not wife at the time, but got engaged, and we're going to get married right after we graduated, this was 2007. So
fingers crossed.
Yeah, exactly. The market was peaking. Everything was rosy, all that. Yeah. So then we get married right after we graduate. And I said, Chuck, hey, my wife is going to go to law school in Gainesville, and I need to live there. And, is there any way that I could justify some kind of a job, staying connected? And so he was, again, really gracious, and we kind of created a position that would make me just enough to get by. And I traveled back and forth from Gainesville every week. Would, sometimes crash in Orlando for one night and see it while my wife was studying for the law school exams and all that fun stuff. So yeah, that was that for a few years. And then as soon as we graduated, came back, and it ended up being a learn things as you go, eventually over time rotate through different positions in the company and roles. Did a little bit of leasing, but much more heavy on the sales and investment side. As when I moved into Gainesville was around the same time that the Great Recession happened. Crazy market change. We did a ton of like receivership work, which again is go behind the scenes of the mortgage and the initial underwriting, see all the assumptions that ended up being broken, figure out how to bring properties back from, this like fall apart position, and eventually sell them for a lender who foreclosed, or a secondary, tertiary, the note changed hands 3 times.
You're almost
before
cleaning up the books in the background.
Yeah, exactly. which again, for me, in the goal of understanding how things fit together, how value is created, how to create, make unique value out of something that might not be there, like that. It was almost 10 years, but at least a 5-year crash course in all of that. And so with the company being heavy property management background, and then walking through coming out of the recession and figuring out how to create deals and create money when it was stalled. And I remember, again, the same guy, Craig, who's a buddy of mine, we went to ICSC, I think it was in 2012 or something like that. And we looked around and we're like, there's nobody here under the age of 40. Like that whole like tranche of people like cleaned out for, half a decade. Yeah. Obviously it's back. Especially retail, back and strong now, but it was kind of an eerie thing. So then I was just grateful to have work and a job and yeah, exactly. But no, it turned out to be just an incredible blessing, because I had nothing to lose, like a lot of the investors did, but everything to gain from learning and knowledge and understanding.
You were almost like paying your tuition at the time.
Oh yeah, exactly.
Like, I'm just going to get in, because First Capital, especially in the early years, it seemed very entrepreneurial, right? It's like there's this organic flow of like learning, diversification, figuring out what you can and can't do,
right?
And through that, your learning experience kind of led you to
That's the benefit of like a smaller company, right? Sure. It's like, we should do this. Let's do that. It's kind of that simple if it makes sense, right? And so, yeah, I had, some mentors and guys that, besides Chuck for sure, and then a couple other guys that would just be like, read this book, understand how this affects real estate, understand how this affects investing, like all of that kind of stuff. And so, it was like a sandbox for trying to learn and put all those pieces.
Do you remember any of those books?
So business book, I still love the E-Myth.
Okay,
It's
great. I just finished that, and then there's the E-Myth Revisited.
Revisited. Yep. I read Revisited, and then I bought my wife E-Myth Attorney when she started her own independent practice, and they're in family law. And so it was that for sure. And then there's a book called Chase the Lion by Mark Batterson.
Okay.
And it's not a business book, but it's talking about God-sized dreams.
Yeah.
And how, like, if it's something you can attain on your own, it's not big enough.
Yeah. Right.
Which is
Dream
always
again.
right. Yeah. Try again. Go bigger. Because you don't want it to be because of you, but just like that. I'm a systems organized. Like, I want to plan. Mm-hmm. And sometimes that can cause me to aim low, because it's stuff I can touch and feel. And so I have to read that book like every year. Yeah. She's like, nope, go bigger.
Revisited.
Yeah, exactly. That kind of a thing. But yeah, those two were books I was told to read, and a number of other ones. But
would you say those two are the most influential?
I think so, at their core. I mean, there's another one, I can't remember the author, The Experience Economy, that has continued to prove true, especially as this world is, continuing to evolve over and over again, that people are going to pay for experiences going forward. But I mean, he told me to read that in 2009, or something like that, which was, I think, before a lot of that. And so still love that book as well. And, seeing all the different businesses and the types of things that are emerging, especially in the retail sector, about, why people want, something unique, something they can do together and collaborate on.
So some of those guys that you had in your life early on, those mentors. So what would you say, like, the most valuable thing that you got from some of those mentors, and even like having mentors as a generality, mentors in your life, what would you say the value is there?
Oh, I think it's just the biggest thing that I learned through a combination of all of them is that you only know what you know. Mm-hmm. There's so much out there you can't absorb, you can't filter through, more so today than ever, everything that's out there. So you need trusted people.
Sure.
And that doesn't have to look like a formal mentor relationship, but in some cases that specifically is helpful. That can kind of say, like, hey, this brought me value in this section. Here's why. Like, let's dig into this. Let's talk about it together. Sure. I mean, we literally had what amounted to an unofficial book club with a couple of guys and just, what'd you think of this? You read through a book, compare notes, that kind of thing. And so I think just the ability to keep pushing yourself. I love reading, but I'm not a natural reader, if that makes sense. Like, when I get through it. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Like my tendency now is to read articles and, things like that, rather than sit down for, cozy up by the fire with a book, as much as, my wife would do that, I think, every day of the week, if time allowed for it. But, just, I like to absorb information and see how I can apply it, that kind of thing. But, I think the combination of the different people that spoke into my life in different ways during those first 10 years was really, really huge, in kind of how
shaped you.
Yeah, exactly. How the path is.
Would you say that you, like, sought out those mentors, or would you say, like, it was just kind of like naturally? Because sometimes people naturally come into our lives and, like, wow, I'm just going to cling to that person, or you actually seek them out.
I think in one circumstance there was one that was like, I want to be mentored by you. Yeah. But I think the rest were more, I wouldn't say sought out. I think being open. Yeah. Like, when you start, like, feeling like a lead to be like, we should, he just invited me to lunch. Like, that was good. How do I make that happen again? That kind of a thing was good. I think in a group session of, like, there was a couple of times where me and a couple other guys all went together, because some of these guys, they have, they run huge companies, and you're like, I need you and your time, but I know you're busy.
Yeah, they're not going to do coffee at Starbucks.
Right. Well, and they're not going to do it one-on-one with 10 different guys, but they might do it one time for 10 guys, or maybe not 10, but 3 to 5, that kind of thing. And so that has always been, I every time I look back at a lot of that's been really valuable. And so, just seeing how those different experiences and those people, who are still out doing great things, and I try and stay connected to now, are doing. But then I've also, me personally, been challenged to, like, okay, how do I pass that forward? Sure. Pay that forward too.
Do you like mentoring?
I don't feel like it's a natural gifting, but I do like it. Yeah. So I know that's kind of a weird answer. I think, like, when I think about First Capital, as I've been running it for the last 4 or 5 years now, on the operational level, I'm trying to build an environment where there's a lot of collaboration. There's a lot of sharing the experiences. The same thing that I was able to do, just on a growing platform for more people. And so, in the sense that like my door's always open, there's people in it all the time asking questions, talking about ideas, bouncing like, so in that sense. And then all the books I've been told to read are on a shelf right behind my head, and be like, read that one, read that one, read that one. Depending on what the conversation is. But it's less structured and more practical life.
It's almost like building a culture around mentorship.
Yeah.
Right? It's like, hey, we're all kind of doing this life together. Like, how can I help you and you help me, kind of thing.
Yeah, exactly. And that's, so when Chuck, who founded the company, wanted to retire, and, we had a plan, of succession over time, that was a big part of where I was at. I was like, I've only experienced First Capital and how we do things. I know a lot of people in the industry, but I also need people around me who are not what I am, and so I was never one that, like, I didn't want to be the man or anything like that. I wanted to build a little bit of more of a horizontal team of leaders that each focused on different areas, that can go win together. With has always been more of my mentality.
There's oftentimes it's like, if you're the smartest person in the room, you're in the wrong room, right? It's like,
sure, yeah.
Today's episode is brought to you by Bryce Knuth of Insurance Office of America. As a contractor or real estate owner in Florida, you've likely experienced the impact of rising insurance premiums year after year. With the challenging insurance marketplace, having a specialist who focuses on your industry is critical now more than ever before. If you'd like a second set of eyes on your current insurance program or don't have a relationship with your current broker, please contact Bryce Knuth at 407-697-6944 via call or text, or email bryce.knuth@ioausa.com. Don't let rising insurance costs catch you off guard. Reach out to Bryce today. But I think those mentors, they're there to guide you and to lead you, but also, kind of, we mentioned off air, was like having those guardrails in your life to know, to push your limits, but know where, where danger is, to say, hey, get back here. This is kind of what's going to proceed you forward.
I think just a general, like, openness. Because I can learn from people that are younger than me, for sure. Just as much as I can learn from the guy who's 15 years my senior with all excellent. Like, there's learning to go all around there, and so I think it's just trying to be open and listening and paying attention, and not kind of get yourself in a mindset that is, I know what I know and that's it.
There's a great book that I just finished last year called Think Again.
Okay,
and so
sounds cool.
The premise of the book is basically like understanding what you don't know, and even though you think you know one thing, like, open up your mind a little bit, because maybe you don't know everything about that one thing. Yeah,
exactly. Well, and so, like, to that point, when I was president of First Capital for a couple of years before I actually became one of the principal owners, and I thought it was going to be the same. I was like, I'm already doing the day-to-day and all that stuff, and I've told Chuck this afterwards. I was like, it's heavier. There's a weightiness that I did not appreciate going in. And so, again, I had this one, this is how it's going to be. And then you get to the other side and, like, oh, that does feel a little different in a way that I wasn't expecting. And
what was the weight behind it?
I think even more than before, feeling responsible for all the people and their families and all. I mean, like you mentioned before, like, a big focus of our organization is building a group that is more than just people you work with during the day. It has a family mindset that we care for each other. And so the more I got to get to know their families, and the more that, like, all that's there, I'm like, whew, all right, we got to go do this.
John has a kid.
Yeah, exactly. And it's like, which, again, it wasn't actually different, but it just felt a little bit different than before. I think Chuck did a great job of me feeling the weight of stewarding clients, business and investments and those relationships that I was prepared for.
Sure.
It was the internal family stuff that I think I had underappreciated how important that was, just from a perception standpoint.
What helped you make that mind shift change?
I think just walking through it, it just got revealed that over the course of the first, year or so. And it was like, oh man, this is real. We had people walk through cancer. We had people walk through stuff. And it's just like, well, do we, take as much time as you want. Like, it's, I need you, like, to get better. So it's, you don't want to make business decisions,
Right.
as much when it can be not about that, or not about that first. And so just walking through multiple circumstances like that, I was like, yeah, it's what I've always wanted, but it's heavier than I realized, I guess, is kind of, the right mix of things there.
Yeah. So as you transfer from aerospace to commercial real estate,
Okay.
what was there one thing specific that you were like, okay, this is absolutely what I want to do? Because it seems like your career was very organic. It was like one thing led to another. Now you're president of First Capital.
It's been an interesting journey that I wouldn't have known to chart out by any means. No, I Chuck would joke with me, and he would say, he asked me early on in the internship, it's like, why real estate? Like, what do you want to do? And I was like, well, I want to be a developer. Sounds great. And he just laughed.
So does every other.
Yeah, and that's what he said. He's like, so doesn't everyone in the world. And he's brought that up, on every few years when we talk about, looking back at things. But it is still true that it feels like solving a puzzle,
Mm-hmm.
trying to put together all the pieces and all that things. And certainly as we've continued to grow, our exposure to different projects and stuff, we've done a lot more working right alongside and in the mix with developers, and are, JVing on a couple little things now. And, so it's been an organic, like, learning the process and,
Sure.
and learning how do we add value to it, to a bunch of guys who have done it 20 times, that kind of stuff. But it's been fun, and it's tied into that original, like, seeing the pieces go together and how it fits.
And oftentimes it's like very behind the scenes. I think that's one thing that people don't really understand is, like, you have brokerage, right? Which is very transactional. It's like, oh, we've, signed this new restaurant deal in this plaza. Great.
Right.
But, you go from development, you go from investments. I mean, there's a ton of moving parts, especially in the development world. I'm more on the construction and development side of things, but, my experience from the commercial broker side of things is like, as a broker, I was like, I only was scratching the surface of what was really going on.
Yeah. Yeah. It's interesting. One of the things I think I appreciated most about the path that I ended up on was learning to be a generalist first.
Yeah.
And then picking focus areas. Like, especially, there was some amount of you had to, because it was a recession and you needed to
just pick up a nail salon if you got to
do anything that would create revenue for you and the company. There's a little bit of that at the beginning, but it turned out to be great, because I think, and it runs all the way through our firm, like, like, they understand how the pieces fit.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it's not like you ask one of our office brokers how a retail lease works and they won't know.
Right.
Like, they've done it too. And it's integrated. And so that was a big part of, again, like, value add creation. Now you're in the world of, like, repurposing space for different uses and being able to think outside of your normal, like, I'm going to go create this triple net lease standard box thing over and over and over again. Has been really helpful, I think, for us in understanding. And so my advice to all of our interns and the people who've gone for us, like, learn broad first.
Yeah.
Not forever, but spend some time, like, understanding it, and then go decide what is the right fit for you, what, where it comes together the best, for what you're wired for. But, and sometimes that can feel like a sacrifice in the amount you get paid, you might make, or whatever earning potential. But for some period of time, at least, I think it's worth it. That would be my advice. I mean, understanding property management, like, when you can look at a budget and know when someone's overpaying for something, or that there's money savings here, or how this clause of the lease can change this bottom line number by a lot, or knowing that switching to LED bulbs, if you're responsible for the power in the HVAC bill, is going to save you a bunch that you can capitalize on, just all that kind of stuff. The moving parts. Again, it's kind of nerdy, but but
it's the moving parts behind the deal.
Yeah, that's the part that takes, an average deal and makes it good, if you can execute it.
What will you say about First Capital's culture as it sits today? Like, if you had to pick a couple of words to describe it, and then what are some things that really shape that, aside from obviously your mentors who've been, very impactful, and then your career path that's been impactful. How would you say the culture at First Capital is either different from other companies, or something structured to where it's really set to grow First Capital?
I don't have a lot of experience with other companies, so I can't really speak to them. So I'll leave that side of it alone. But I know that I would rather hire a guy that seems solid from like core values and what they're about and what motivates them than somebody with a bunch of just real estate experience. Because one's textbook and a little bit of experiential knowledge, one you cannot teach no matter what, and it'll come back to get you one day. And so I think for me, First Capital's been about, especially the last 2 or 3 years, has been about building a platform. Because going back to your previous comment, the evolution of brokerage that we joke about is I'll take any lease. I'll be a little bit more picky about the leases. Okay, now I just want to sell stuff. All right, I only want to sell certain things. Okay, now I just want to be the owner. I want to be the owner, investor, and or developer. I mean, that's the path that everyone, when you go into the business, whether you're aiming for it or not, that's what functionally happens over time. And so I think it's about building a platform for guys that are like-minded, that have, and I say guys interchangeably, guys, girls, everything, but like that are like-minded, that can come in and, feel like they're part of a team and feel like everybody's moving up to kind of win together, on behalf of the clients. That's how we win, is by executing, by creating wealth for them. We'll create wealth for us by creating trust with them, is what creates trust, with us within the team. And that's kind of what we're about. And challenging that, I think, if you're looking at it from a pure business standpoint, I'm competing against some local firms and some national firms for talent and for clients, depending on what type of property we're talking about. And so we've gone about just trying to say, look, I want to give you all the same tools you'd have up there at any other shop that you might be considering. I want it to feel different, like from a culture and mentality and what our core values are and how those are lived out, during the day to day. But really, like, when we talk about, like, we've expanded and have relationships with other offices and other markets now. Which is probably the newest thing. We've been part of this group called CoreFac, where, like, I was on a phone call with a group out of San Antonio. That's their market. They work in that 2 hours around San Antonio, Texas. But I just called her and just be like, hey, like, tell me about how you're running your business. And it's like wide open conversation for an hour and a half about, this is how I do this. This is what she has. I reached out because she has a great teaching, mentoring, educating, platform, and I was impressed with it. And so as we're looking to expand the network, I was like, man, they would be great, because just that piece, how good it would be so beneficial to me and other firms, across the country. And so it's just about trying to having a little bit of a platform mentality on the business side, and having a, like, you matter. You're people that, we want to care about, want to spend time with. You want work to be fun, because especially brokerage sometimes, property management a lot of time is taxing, to put it lightly. And so it has to be an enjoyable experience, and one where, we're focused on, the people we're around every day, for it to be fun.
And creating that organic structure of growth, on the front end, right? Before you creating that, and then you kind of bring people onto that. I think it brings a lot of value in the overall culture of the company, right? Because everybody understands, hey, you've invested into this structure, and this is where, when they come on board, this is where we want you to go. This is where we want to traject you in your career path. So I think that creates a lot of buy-in within the company.
I trying to be it first, right? Like, be the thing that you want other people to emulate is the goal. Imperfect in many ways, but there was a lady, I was involved in the president's office at UCF when I was out there, and Dr. Barnes used to come speak to the council, and she used to say, bloom where you're planted. And at its most basic analogy level, it's like, you just be excellent at what you do, but beyond that, a plant, the roots go out. They go out seeking nutrients, seeking growth, seeking things like that. And it was like, that's what I want for people. I want, no matter what they're doing, to be trying to be better, trying to better themselves, trying to, be exceptional for themselves and for our clients. And so if they do that, everything else just happens, like, and as long as that's what I mean, when I'm interviewing people, I'm asking them, like, I don't care about your resume. I read it earlier. Like, what motivates you? Why do you get up? Why, like, what kind of music do you listen to? That tells you a lot about people.
Do you listen to podcasts?
Yeah, exactly. How do you feel about podcasts and books? No, just trying to get a real sense for who people are, because you're going to spend every day with them. Like that's been a huge part of it.
And it's going to be their driving motivator, right?
Exactly.
So like Simon Sinek has a book, Start With Why.
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
So it's like you're going to have those hills and valleys and everything, but if you don't have a common why, and money can't be it.
No, absolutely not. Money's just a magnifier of whatever the real why is.
Correct.
In your heart, it's like figuring out it. If I have people with relatable whys, to use that mentality, then when one of them has a need, the other one's there without thinking. They're ready to go help them and push forward. So, and because we're continuing to build people with similar whys, then we can go dream bigger together and be challenged about what can we do next, and how do we continue to make ourselves better, and that kind of thing.
So that's awesome. What can you do next? So that's going to be in part 2. We'll jump into that.
All right.
So Trent, I appreciate you giving me your origin story. Like I had mentioned earlier, it's really admirable of what you guys have created at First Capital.
I appreciate that.
And I know it hasn't been easy, but it seems like God's blessing it, and it is a transition that is continuing to happen and continuing to grow. So I'm excited to see what the future has for you guys.
Awesome.
So we'll jump into part 2, Beyond the Blueprint podcast. Stay tuned for part 2 with Trent Scott at First Capital.